Okay, good evening. This is the Board of Finance Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Committee special meeting. This is Chris DeWitt. I'm going to run the meeting until we have election of officers. Can I please ask you to stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Our second agenda item is to consider and act upon election of officers. Is there any recommendation for chairman? Ms. Marmion?
I'd like to nominate Chris DeWitt to be chair.
I'd like to second.
Mr. Curley seconds. Okay. Accept. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you for your faith.
You've got a lot of experience, Chris. Appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. It's as I think you'll come to find out tonight, there's a lot of history and there's quite a lot of data. But certainly thank you for volunteering, and especially thanks to my former committee member, now new committee member, Ms. Marmion, for volunteering a second time. We should both have our heads looked at. So anyway, would any nominations for recording secretary? Or I'd be happy to record the minutes for this one meeting if that makes the most sense. I'll be happy to do that. So if you're all okay, I'll take the quick meeting minutes.
Sure.
And okay, sure. Wonderful. So included in this meeting tonight, so thank you again, Chris DeWitt, Ms. Sheila Marmion, and Mr. Craig Curley, all members of the Board of Finance. Now is the Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Committee. Our third order of business is to discuss and approve this committee's goals. So very quickly, and I apologize for not actually bringing the ordinance with me, but I mean I sent you some preliminary data from our last committee.
Yep.
The reason for this tonight's meeting and any subsequent meetings is to determine if this committee has to determine, at least among the three of us,
yep,
if we believe that a broader Board of Finance and RTM combined Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Committee should be convened. By state statute, it is the Board of Finance's role to recommend any changes.
Okay.
The process starts with the Board of Finance. It certainly ends with the RTM because it is an ordinance, and of course it would be one big joint committee.
Yep.
And then the RTM would certainly join in. There would be
the full bodies of both the Board of Finance and the RTM would have to vote on anything anyway. What we do is just recommendations.
No, actually, what happens is if we do recommend that we open up this ordinance again and go out for the full-blown thing, there'll be a 3-member committee appointed by the Board of Finance, and those 3 people will represent the Board of Finance just like we did the last time.
That's not this committee?
It could be.
It depends on if we have RTM members.
Well, then, yes, and then that committee would then further include the RTM.
All right, so maybe, does it make sense to move item number 5 up to discuss next?
Well, number 5 is more of after we've looked at the data to see if we need to move forward. I'm just saying that I just wanted to. Number 3 was to discuss the goal. So the goal of this committee,
yep,
is to review as much data. And of course, I've provided some data this evening.
You did.
If this is not sufficient enough data and we want to meet with Mr. Murray, who's a tax assessor, have any other conversations, we can have multiple meetings. That's,
okay.
So let me make that perfectly clear.
Yep.
The intent, if we could decide this evening, that would be wonderful, right? But the intent is not to force this through, this 3-member committee, right?
So, okay, help me understand. So I'm trying to understand what this 3-person committee is in relation to what the 3-person committee is that you just described versus the possible joint committee that would include members from both the Board of Finance and the RTM.
Right. So here's the process. If there's, the Board of Finance convenes a committee.
Yep.
To look at the ordinance and see if there's good reason to review the ordinance with a broader committee of Board of Finance and, right.
But would that broader committee potentially replace this or be in addition to this committee?
It could be we three, or it could be three different people from the Board of Finance. They don't have to be the same.
Okay, but I guess my question is, if there is a joint committee that's formed that
Mm-hmm.
has representation from both the Board of Finance and the RTM.
Right.
That's a separate committee and we would exist as well. We may be on both, but.
Right.
But this would. Okay.
This committee, if we come to an agreement that we should or should not reopen senior and disabled tax ordinance.
Yeah.
We make a recommendation to the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
We make our recommendation to the Board of Finance, 9 of us raise our hand, we should do it or we shouldn't do it. This committee is then dissolved. Because all we're doing is recommending to our board if there should be a recommendation to move with the full committee.
And the full committee would be a joint committee.
And the full committee would be a joint committee.
Then so it would be just that joint committee and this would not exist.
Correct.
Okay.
So let me ask,
I understand.
let me ask, I'm glad you asked this question, so let me just put another scenario forward.
Yeah.
We go through today's meeting.
Oop, my apologies.
That's okay.
Oh.
We go through this meeting, we hear the data, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And are we deciding two things then? One, whether or not it's worth opening up this ordinance again?
Mm-hmm.
And would that be potentially separate from, would that be separate from convening the committee? Like, I'm just confused, like,
If
should we be going through all of this tonight on our own, or should we be doing it in conjunction with the joint committee? So that
No,
we can have...
it's the Board of Finance's responsibility, the whole Board of Finance, to make a recommendation that the ordinance be reviewed by the full committee. Our job is, in a smaller body, to make a recommendation to the full board.
To open up the...
Right.
Open everything up.
Right. So our role is binary. Open it up, don't open it up.
Okay. And then the second decision is to open it up to a joint committee.
Right, so there's really no decision at that point. If we recommend to the Board of Finance, open it up,
then it's going to be a joint committee.
It's going to be a joint committee. It's a foregone conclusion.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was like, whatever we review is under a joint committee. I understand.
No.
Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Fred?
I didn't realize it worked that way, but
Yeah.
it does make
Yeah.
sense.
It does make sense.
I didn't
So
realize
basically,
this could be a one meet. We could decide tonight.
We could decide. We
And that's-
literally could decide tonight, right?
Okay.
So we're starting the process, right?
Okay.
And we could, with our vote, we could literally stop the process, or we could continue the process. Right?
So let me ask you this. Because we're going through, information, and again, this came up last time, should we have opened this up to public comment, or is that not appropriate?
Well, so I deliberated over that, because what I wanted tonight to be is more of an overview of what we did prior, and
Right.
then some additional data. I thought that what we really didn't need was public comment, specific public comment on here's why I think you should open it up. If we have a second meeting,
Then we would go through
then
this stuff again.
we could certainly go through it with public comment
Okay.
if we think it's necessary.
Okay, because that's my concern, is that there are a lot of stakeholders in the community, as we well know,
Well,
because
and-
we saw them last time.
Yeah, and with something like this, which to me feels like the third rail, if we were to make a decision to not open the ordinance up
Mhm.
without public comment, that's gonna have a problem. But if we were to make a decision, no harm, no foul, we're opening it up for a broader,
We should go over it again. We
But
have to.
we don't have, that to me, nobody's gonna object to that without public comment, because we're just getting the ball rolling, and then the public will have a
Right.
voice in that.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but unlike what we did last time, when we convened a committee last time, it was a full-blown committee with the Board of Finance and the RTM. We had the RTM members were here, Jill Vergara especially, and participated in meetings. It was very open meetings. It wasn't, it wasn't
We had
formal.
measured the Fairfield Taxpayers Association, the senior.
Herb Lime Cooler and the Fairfield Senior Advocates, FSA. Right.
Yeah.
So tonight, the objective of this committee is, again, to make a recommendation to the full board whether we believe the ordinance should be open again. The public I don't disagree that we should have public comment, and that can be at a second meeting. Maybe our second meeting is just to have public comment. I don't know if we've gotten through all the data.
Sure.
So
yeah.
So as long as we understand kind of our role.
That's fine.
Okay, which is number 3. So agenda item 4 is to review.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Yes,
before you move
sure.
off of 3, can we
course.
talk about the timeline a little bit? I
Yes.
think we covered goals and objectives well, but timeline.
Oh, yes. So, in a perfect expedient world, we could come here tonight and say, open it, don't open it. And then next week, we have a Board of Finance meeting, and the 3 of us, as the chairman, I represent this body, and I say, we don't think we should open it up. 9 hands go up, but let's not open it up, and we're done, right? Mm-hmm. If we're going to have another meeting with public comment, that seems unrealistic. Mm-hmm. So we would need the timeline would then move to a meeting in March.
Which is tough with the budget.
Which is tough with the budget. We could probably do the first meeting in March is not a budget meeting, administrative meeting.
It is, I thought. The March 4th or whatever.
Is that a budget meeting? I thought
have it down as a budget.
Oh, maybe so. Right. We do need to be,
Well, no. The
4th is just a regular meeting.
It's a regular meeting.
Okay.
Then March the
Is it the 7th or the 10th, something like that?
The 10th is a
okay.
Board of Finance meeting.
So that's a really good point. So maybe we could set as a tentative timeline for this committee to make a recommendation at our March 1st meeting, because that was what Lori also said to me. She goes, well, when do you think you'll be ready? And I said, next week. And she's like, really? And I said, yeah, I know, right?
But it's just, we're not commenting on anything in the ordinance as much as.
Well, it's open or closed,
open or closed, yeah.
Right. This is the way I view it. The ordinance prior to the last changes, that table that we adjusted with the percentages and hadn't been updated since 2012.
Yeah, I had heard that.
So that's a long time, right? And there were a lot of changes in the world and in everything, right? Mm-hmm. So it was time. Now the RTM through the years had made changes. In fact, they made a very significant change to portions of it that opened it up for more, because of course it's senior and disabled tax relief. Mm-hmm. And I think they made some really good changes before we involved in the process that were more inclusive of the disabled portion of the constituency, right?
Yep.
So but that real fiscal chart in the thing hadn't been changed since 2012, so it needed to be done.
Yeah.
Right? And we deliberated over it long and hard, and one of the things that Sheila was very adamant about, as was I, was you can't put this thing in place and then go, okay, we're done. You kind of need to let it percolate a little bit.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
What's happening.
And I think what you'll see in here is there's words like, we made predictions. This is what Ross Murray always says to me. How many households are we going? Well, Chris, my prediction is 1,306. 10 people could move out of town. 10 people could die. There's a whole thing. It's very hard to figure this out.
Yeah.
He has a form that he tracks on a monthly basis called a 53E or something like that. And he sent it to me, and I said, these numbers are crazy. He goes, don't look at that. He goes, you've got to look. He goes, what we've done in the past is every June he sends out a blast to the RTM, and we use that as kind of the milestone. So as of June, where do we think these numbers are? Which is the numbers you see in here.
Okay.
Just to give it, a little bit of, and what's nice about June is we've gone through tax season. Everyone has either filed or not filed. Everyone has pretty much paid their first installment of taxes. Now, if you get through your first installment of taxes and you say, oh shoot, I should have filed for senior and disabled tax relief. No, sorry, you have to do it next year. So by June, you got a pretty good idea. The thing that changes constantly, which I addressed in here in the last slide, is attrition. Yeah. Attrition is a major problem with senior and disabled tax relief. It's, for growing it, for keeping it consistent, I mean, just for a lot of things.
It's unpredictable. It's not, it's just 100%.
Yeah. And, and as a tax assessor, Ross says this is one of the most unpredictable things he does. And that's saying something from a tax assessor, sure. to be honest with you.
Right.
So I think it's a good, maybe a tentative guideline to shoot for making a recommendation to the full board by March 1st. Do you agree with that?
Why not?
Well, or sooner. Like, I'm still not convinced that we can't make that decision tonight because
no, we can make a decision, but we can present that decision to the Board of Finance.
Right.
That's what it is.
Oh, you're saying we could do it February 22nd?
Yeah.
So.
What's February 22nd? We have a meeting?
Next week.
Quarterly.
Yeah, our quarterly meeting, yeah.
Okay.
Last night's meeting was a special meeting to get the non-recurring capital.
Yeah.
So as a far timeline, let's 3/1 or sooner.
Okay.
So that's great, thank you. That's a good recommendation. Okay, great. And listen, we don't need to be too formal here, right? You can tell, right? So the fourth data item is to review what we did last time. And, again, Sheila and I, we really lived it. So, I want to really make sure that you understand.
Yeah.
And if there's any time where you're like, I don't understand, just
sure.
Take me down a peg, right? Because seriously, I was laughing. I was talking to Lori and I said, senior disabled tax relief is like riding a bike. Once you get back on, you figure it out again. But when you first get back on, it's like, oh crap, I forget how to pedal. There's so many things, just so many moving parts that I spent, better part of a week. I gathered all this. Oh, I have a here.
A color copy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I spent the better part of a week looking at what Ross sent me and just trying to get level set.
And this is posted on the website, correct?
It is as background on the website.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And is the ordinance available on the?
The ordinance is available on the website as well.
Okay.
Not on our meeting notice, but under the normal ordinance area.
Okay.
I did check that. It's actually apparently there's a waiting period. It's got to sit in some kind of queue, and it should be coming out like very soon. But it is available to view. It just hasn't been updated into the full kind of final thing.
Okay.
So if we can dig right into that, this is to review what the former committee did, and the former committee was certainly Sheila Marmion. It was Jim Walsh, and it was myself, right? And our goal, we had 3 goals, right? To maximize the number of seniors that can take advantage of the senior and disabled tax relief.
Okay.
To maximize the benefits for the lowest income seniors in town. So what you're going to see in here is income brackets. Starting from 0, and they top out about, I think it's 75,300, and they're in bands. There's 5 or 6 bands.
Yep.
And there was a previous proposal made by the RTM that the CFO at the time was very concerned about because it had eliminated QTAV and a bunch of things, and it didn't really control spending. So as the CFO, he threw up a red flag. He says, I think we need the Board of Finance to help look at this. Mm-hmm. Well, when the town attorney, and I think it was Mr. Saxel at the time, looked at it, he said, by the way, by state statute, you really have to start this process.
Was it Saxel or was it Stanton?
No, you're right, Stanton Lesser.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's you're absolutely right. I was thinking of Connie Saxel. So we wanted to make sure that when you look in those bands, that we're.
Can I interrupt you for
sure,
1 second?
Of course.
Did Stanton throw up red flags after the RTM committee presented it to the Board of Finance?
No,
Or
because
was it
the
prior
RTM
to?
doesn't have to present it to the Board of Finance.
Well, they did though, remember? It was,
They did after, so what they
was
did
it
is,
this prior to or after that they threw up that?
so I think the timeline was this. The RTM came up with a proposal. I think Mr. Tetro, as the first selectman, said, I want the CFO to look at this. Bob Mayer looked at it as the CFO and said, oh, I think this is problematic. And then he said, we need to get the Board of Finance involved. And that's when the RTM briefed us at that point.
Okay.
Right. So one of our goals was to maximize the benefits for the seniors in that lowest tax, that lowest income range. And third, to keep the taxpayer investment growth to acceptable levels.
Yep.
So, for people that don't know, I mean, I think the three of us know, this is not free, right?
Yeah.
And it's a tax, I forget what the exact word is,
Well,
diversion or?
It's a tax,
It's like a tax avoidance. I mean, it's not a tax avoidance. It's basically,
it's a loss in revenue.
it's a loss in tax revenue is really what it is,
Wait,
right?
Chris,
It's,
so, I mean, I know it's seniors, and people with disabilities, I think, right? To
Yes, no,
maximize
that's
the number of
absolutely-
seniors
Yep.
and people with disabilities that can take advantage, right?
that is
makes
true.
Can I ask a question, and I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel, but I understand the concern that the CFO had expressed about
Yeah.
This could be cost the town much more and all this other stuff. And again, I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel, but I'm just asking a newbie question.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't we just say we want to
Set a limit?
set a limit of $3 million for senior tax relief, and then if, depending on the number of applicants, like, if the like you follow this grid and maybe they get $5,000 per household relief up to $3 million, but if they have more applicants, then it just becomes proportional, so that it's divided up. Maybe the most you can get is 5,000, but if it's oversubscribed, you're going to get 4,200.
Yeah.
And then that's the flag for us to revisit it next year. Maybe $3 million's not enough.
Well, I think was it 3.5 million?
I'm
What
just
was
throwing that
the-
around.
Well, no, it was
Because
when,
it was in the budget, we actually have to, budget for this.
Yeah, of course.
it is in the budget book. It's in the
But it
overview.
could be more
Was it 3.2? Was it?
So when we started the process, which is fiscal year 19, it was $3.32 million.
3.32. So there was, Craig,
Right.
it wasn't a limit as much as kind of a, I don't know, not a goal, but kind of like a number put out.
Yeah, so there had been discussions in previous years about how to control senior and disabled tax relief spending.
Right.
And there was discussions about, yes, why don't we set a limit, right? The way the process works right now and how it worked during this process is we just do math, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're going to see the numbers, and they're big numbers, right? And the changes that we implemented or we recommended to the RTM they ultimately implemented did increase the tax burden, the loss of tax revenue.
Yeah.
But if it were to go out for if we decide to go for a full review of this again and cap it, the problem with that is this is just personal.
Yeah.
Right? I'm 72. I'm making $5,000 a year in revenue, and my tax benefit is $3,000. And Sheila is the same age as I am, but she's making $65,000, and we cap it, and we say, oh, I'm sorry, there's been too many people. I'm going to reduce your money by 20% and Sheila's money by 20%, and I'm like, but she's making $75,000 a year, and I'm making $5,000. It's
It's an equity issue.
It is an equity issue, and if I may be so bold, when the RTM did their update,
Yep.
I think their goal was to get as many people included in the program as humanly possible. But what that meant was that the higher income levels also were receiving. It was expanded to bring in more people on the high end. We backed off on that, and what you'll see is, in that bottom range up to 75,000, we didn't change the ordinance. We left it the way it was, but we bolstered the top end.
Okay.
So those were our goals. Just real quick, what did we do? So this was a very hands-on committee. We went to the senior center for 2 lunches, and we interviewed people. We had an interview form. Sheila, Jim, and I did that twice. We conducted meetings with the Fairfield Senior Advocates, which, certainly the RTM committee on senior and disabled tax. The town tax assessor was like on speed dial for me, so he provided a lot of data. He came to many of our meetings, and he's certainly available to come to any subsequent meetings we have here. And
when was this? 3 years ago? 4 years?
3 years ago.
2019.
Prior to COVID.
2019. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the CFO was very involved, and that was Mr. Mayer at the time, and he was very helpful.
Okay.
We created some new tools for analysis. I have a very voluminous.
You had a binder. It's a big binder.
There's this Excel spreadsheet that I created with a lot of help from a lot of people, and what it did is it's a predictive tool. And you put in, so you lay out the program as it was, and it says, this is how many households we think we're going to get. And if you make the limit go from $7,500 to $10,000 with a bunch of assumptions, it says, now you're getting 10 more households.
Right.
It's just a predictive tool.
Good.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share that with you.
Cool.
And when we really did analyze multiple scenarios with the stakeholders. We said, what do you guys think about bolstering the whole, income range or just the low end? And people were very vocal, like, listen, I'm in that first range where I make, up to $10,000 or $18,000. I think you should be bolstering that more. And that's where they went, right?
Right.
So on slide 4, and this is a little busy, but I'll try to walk you through it. You could see on the left-hand side, those are the 1, 2, 3. There's 7 income ranges.
Yeah.
Anywhere from $0 to $75,300. In the old ordinance, which in this chart is called FY19.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It should be slide 4. If you go back one, probably.
It's this one on the other page, I believe. I don't know.
I don't think you have the right presentation.
I'll take the new one. All right, thank you. Slide 4, I got it.
There you go.
Thank you.
Right. So FY19 was the prior ordinance. There's 2 constraints put on the taxpayer, right? There's a percentage of tax, how much we're willing to pay, and there's a dollar amount, right? Now, by state law, a taxpayer has to pay 25% of their taxes.
Okay.
So, when we say in that top line that 0 to 18,100 percentage tax went from 67% to 75%, that means that everyone in that range gets maximum benefit. We couldn't give them another dollar if we tried.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. So 75, keep that number in your head, right? 75% is maximum benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can see we increased the percentage of the tax up through the first 5 brackets, and the last 2 brackets we didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the tool that I came up with, it also calculated the tax implication, and this was done for a lot of different reasons, right? The limits, and this is the part that I was getting confused with trying to remember what we did on this. There's a dollar limit as to how much you can give credit, and you'll see we took all those numbers up to so, for example, in the lowest range, the maximum percentage you get was 75%, and if you were under $5,000 before, you were all cool. But if you were $5,001, you were strained there. We bumped that to $7,500, that really did cover a lot more people. And again, all of those dollar increases were made because it kept us within that percentage increases. The percentage increases are real, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
What the result of that was, and again, I call this predicted results because when we got done, and Ross Murray is very clear on this, I'm giving you the predicted results. We're going to make a prediction of how many households and how many people are getting maximum benefit. This could vary. It's crazy how much it could vary, right?
Yep.
So the prediction was that we were going to go from 1,306 homes that were eligible. We were actually going to reduce the number of homes eligible. But look at that top line.
Yeah, increase the people who need it.
Right. So the top line went from 121 to 132, so 11 additional homes. And you'll see the top 4 lines are actually increases. And then at the bottom, there's a little bit of decrease or it's staying kind of constant, right? Yep. But here's the big deal. The participants getting the maximum benefit went from 109 to 230 people. So we were literally taking an additional, what's that, math in public, right? 111 people, 121 people, right? And we were giving them the maximum benefit that we could possibly give them as a town.
Yeah, and if I go to the bottom line, that change costs another
A lot, yeah.
$450,000.
Yes.
Yep, I
Yeah.
got it.
Call it $500,000, if you will, right?
Yep.
And and the decrease in below is kind of the summary, right? But that's a good segue, right? So we as a committee realized that we were doing great benefit here, but it came at a cost of about $500,000. And we pushed that forward to the administration. At this point, Brenda is now is first select woman. She said, yes, push it through. Okay. And we did. And we did that in the COVID year,
right.
which is a little crazy.
Yeah.
Slide 5 is a little bit of this is one of the outputs from the spreadsheet, and I think this is important. The top box was the old ordinance, right? On the left-hand side is the average income, and that's the same 7 ranges of income. But across the top are the home assessments. So what this says is up top, if you were in the top range, making 0 to 18,000, in the old ordinance, 13%, this is average, of course, right? 13% of your income was going to pay taxes. And, not too bad. But if you were in that income range and your house was assessed at $300,000, you were paying 22%.
Yep.
If you were in that income range and, God forbid for you, your house was assessed at $600,000, 81% of your total income was going to your taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
So that blue box now translate down to the bottom, and this is when we made the recommended changes. So now for that person in that lowest income bracket with a $200,000 home assessment, you used to pay 13%, now you're only paying 10% of your total income. It gets significant at $300,000 when you've gone from 22% now down to 15%.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
The blue boxes are highlighted because we thought for those first 5 income ranges, I'm not saying you couldn't own a home in that $400,000, $600,000 assessment, but more than likely you're in that $200,000 to $300,000 assessment.
Makes sense.
So there was real benefit there. In percentage-wise, if you were in that bracket, you were paying, 3 to 4% less because of the changes we made.
Okay.
So we thought that was significant. And the conclusions on slide 6 were this. Yes, we could potentially lose a couple participants. We were going to increase the tax burden by 14.4%, not insignificant, right? That's the exact number, 3799, right? We were going to increase the number of participants getting maximum benefit by 111%. So when we looked at all that data, we said we believed that was a fair and equitable thing. And the Fairfield Senior Advocate said, good start. They're a tough group, but they're
a step in the right direction.
They are a very informed group. Herb Weinkuhler and that crew there is a very, very informed group of people. I think you'd agree with that as well, right?
Yeah.
But those were the recommendations. Those are the recommendations that we then brought forward to the Board of Finance, and then those recommendations were rolled forward to the RTM. I briefed the L&A committee. All the financial aspects of the ordinance they took all of our recommendations, just like that chart said before.
Yep.
There was some wording about how the process went that was changed in the RTM, but anything fiscal, they took all of our recommendations. So now, slide 7, I now have the end of year fiscal 22 predictions from Mr. Murray. Just so we're all clear, the end of fiscal year 22 is June 30th of 2022. Right. You'll see the income brackets haven't changed. The limits are the limits that we recommended because they are now law. They're in ordinance, right? What's really happened is our eligible homes is actually 1,318. So we've actually gained some households.
Yeah.
Now, I want to be perfectly clear. The reevaluation,
impacted this.
screwed our math up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, and let me tell you why. I think there's a thing in there called QTAV, which is Qualified Tax Assessment Value.
Okay.
If you're, and I think is it 650,000? I'll say 650,000. If I'm wrong, I'll make sure I correct you. But in there it says if your house is appraised over $650,000, you don't get to play.
Yeah.
Right. This was the part of the ordinance that when the RTM removed it, the CFO kind of went, "Oh, this is bad," right? So that's why we kept that QTAV, and that was one of our decisions to keep the QTAV in. So with reevaluation, so if you're before the reevaluation, if your house was at $649,000, you're all good with senior disabled tax relief. Your reevaluation came through. Now you're $651. You're not in the system, and vice versa. So the reevaluation, kind of played. I don't want to say played havoc, but it certainly changed our predictions, or Mr. Murray's predictions, right?
And I know the bottom line says the cost rose by roughly 7%, but look at the homes. I mean, that's pretty. I think that's pretty damn good.
I think it's impressive as well, right? So you'll see that the homes actually did go up. Now the participants getting maximum benefit, that number's still a little fuzzy with me. And I've got to note it to Mr. Murray. It hasn't changed much. It's like 228, but it's in red just because But suffices to say that number has not changed significantly. Okay. The distribution of them has changed a little bit, right? So at the end of fiscal year 22, we're going to see an increase in overall eligible households from the old ordinance. Mm-hmm. We're going to see an increase in participants getting the maximum benefit, or it's going to stay constant. It's going to be very, very close. Yep. Right? What we are seeing is this is a guarantee. We are going to see an increase of another approximately 7%. So we predicted 3.78. The actual is 4.078 million. So we've reached the $4 million mark, which is painful. That, by the way, I confirmed with our CFO. That is the number that is in. I haven't seen the budget, but that is the number that's in the budget for calculation, and that is the number that Mr. Murray put forward for the budget book. So we've cracked that $4 million mark, which is, scary.
Yeah.
So that's another. It's another. What are we talking about? $230,000. Not insignificant, but that's what's going to happen at the end of the year. So what has happened is we made these changes, and in a lot of ways we reaped more benefit than we even predicted we were going to reap, with eligible households and eligible participants.
And people participating. I'm wondering if the awareness went up, like what contribution potentially people's awareness of this, because that was an issue that we looked at as well. Like, how do we get the information out? How do people even learn about this? So I'm wondering if, I don't know, if at tax time when people went down to file their taxes, it was being promoted more actively. I don't know.
Well, so it's a two-year cycle,
Right.
just so you know, Craig. They don't do this every year, so if the three of us run senior disabled tax relief, I could be up this year, you could be up next year, and you
Right.
could be in with me, right?
Mhm.
But it's a two-year cycle. And one of the big concerns of Ms. Vergara, and rightfully so, was how do people know about this? Do people know about this? When we went to the senior center, I was very surprised that a lot of people were like, oh, yes, I know about it. I'm taking advantage of it. This is wonderful.
They have
right?
they have tax help go directly
Yeah.
to the senior
So
center.
the tax department
Goes there.
will go to the senior center and tell them, like like they're doing it right now, because I checked with Julie DeMarco,
Yeah.
and they come and say, do you know about senior disabled tax relief?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I never heard of it.
Right.
And they'll actually fill out the forms for them, because there's a form you got to fill out. There's some information, disclosure information that you have to provide.
Yeah.
The tax assessor, tax collector, excuse me, and putting a little piece of paper in the early tax bills that says, have you filed for your senior and disabled tax relief?
Great.
So we did implement that. So that's where we believe we're going to be at the end. Slide 8, I just wanted to throw that out there because, listen, much to what Sheila was just talking about. How do we get more people in the program? Certainly awareness, but these are real numbers,
Yep.
right? We started the year with 1306, and we had 5 deferrals, so we had 1311. 52 people were added. 52 people is amazing. That's a lot of people, I think.
It is a lot.
I really think it is. 13 people passed away. They go by households, because most of the time, if there's a rare occasion where the husband passes away and the wife stays in the house, but very frequently but this is by household, just so we're clear.
Yep.
And 30 homes were sold. 2 people failed to refile. So we gained 52, but we lost 45.
Yeah.
Right.
So we got a delta of 7,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, therein lies the struggle with senior, and
Predict.
and it's very unpredictable, right? So, the next steps. So as we said before, we need to come to consensus on whether we should open this up and reanalyze it again.
Yep.
Right? Just so we're 100% clear,
Yep.
because Lori asked me this question and she was surprised when I gave her the answer.
Fiscal year 20.
If we decide to do anything,
Yeah.
you will not see anything in any budget until FY24. So we're all gonna be in a room together, hopefully, talking about FY23 next month.
Mm-hmm.
What, you know something
right.
I don't, why wouldn't we be in a room together?
Well, I mean, hopefully we're gonna really be together is my point.
I don't know.
That ship has sailed.
Yeah.
That $4 million number in the ordinance that's in place is gonna be for the next year.
Yeah.
So you're gonna be into the next
Sure.
fiscal year,
Yeah.
given all of the complications of opening this up and looking at it
Sure.
again and voting and
Yep.
believe me.
Yep.
And then ultimately our last task is as a committee to make a recommendation to the total board.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for that. That was incredibly educational, thorough.
Thank
too.
you very
I
much.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate your attention. For me, it's kind of a benefit analysis, right? I truly feel like we shouldn't open this up again. I'm just going to say from a personal perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but I did spend, and Sheila did spend, a fair bit of our life on this. So, we might not be the best judge
Yeah.
of this whole thing, right? Just from the battle scars. But from a perspective of change in the last 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
We've gone through this reevaluation, which kind of affected the numbers. We are seeing very positive upticks in the amount of people. Not to mention, we're also seeing an uptick in the budget, right? I don't know what benefit breaking this open again is gonna really substantial benefit it's gonna have so soon.
So I have I hear what you're saying. I also think that sometimes it takes time to see an effect. Like, is this a trend? Is this an anomaly? Is this what I'm saying?
I'd say last year was not a normal tax year by any stretch of the imagination.
And that's the other thing is that it's been a strange couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So, people selling their houses because, the housing market is so hot, COVID, or dying because of who the heck knows?
Right.
So I don't know if this is kind of predictive or if it's, if it's a trend or if it's an anomaly, I don't know. So more time will give us more understanding. And there's been no sense of normalcy over the past 2 years. So that's one thing. Yeah. But on the other hand, I would say, I feel strongly that the way that it was, the process last term or last whenever wasn't ideal, that now we have an opportunity to engage at the get-go to look at this and work with the RTM and have them engaged, because ultimately they are the authors and of the ordinance itself. So looking at the ordinance more closely, getting different perspectives. More coordinated, and that's...
Well, I mean, we were,
but...
I hate to use that word coordinated because we were very coordinated, and again, all of the recommendations that we put forward were adopted.
Right. So,
with the exception of the reporting requirements, but other than that.
Okay. Well, the one thing that I did hear, and you just said it, confirmed it a moment ago, whatever we do now, if we were to open this back up and kind of dive into it again, it's not going into effect for the current budget. It's going into effect for the following budget. So to me...
Best case.
Right, and I get that, and because there's no way we get something through fast enough to, right, so fine. With that in mind, and knowing that there's a ton of nuance to this, I'm afraid that if we don't open it up and we try and do it again next year, now we're putting it off another year again. So knowing that the process takes time, I'm in favor of opening it up and taking another look. I mean, I think what was done was actually, you said that this was unpredictable. I think these numbers are pretty darn close to what was expected. So I think that predictive tool was incredible. But I just think that there's an opportunity here to work on this with the members of the RTM. Like, I know things got backwards with Stanton's recommendation and things like that, and I'm in favor of opening it up. If we do decide not to, I think we don't make that decision tonight. I think we decide to have a meeting with the public comment. But if we do decide that we are going to open it up, we can make that decision now and then move forward, because there's nobody in the public is going to object to us opening it up.
And here's...
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, you or me or whatever. But here's the way I look at it.
If we open it up, it doesn't mean we're going to change anything. It
right.
just means we're going to revisit this again and see if there's something that could be...
There's almost 100% chance that someone will want to put their own fingerprints on it, and I have to say, and you've been nothing if not consistent with the message of, we got to let this kind of sit. Even though we did this 2 years ago, this has been applied for exactly one fiscal year.
Right.
So even though the process takes a fiscal year and a half, if you will, right?
Yeah.
I'm still not clear, like you're not clear if this is an anomaly or if we're trending.
Right. I guess, but here's the other way I look at it, Chris. I'm like, what truly is the downside of opening it up? Again, is it that we, I think this is solid. I really do. I think this is solid, and I'm so comfortable with what was done, and I'm, a little bit. I feel like we've opened this up to more households. We changed I think we made some good changes. I'm concerned about this number growing even further, but that's whatever. So we need to see where it goes. But on the other hand, I feel like there's no harm in opening this up. Like, if it's going to be changed, if people want to make changes and they have different ideas or whatever it is, then whomever can say that doesn't make sense fiscally, it does make sense, but I don't think it's going to be a huge risk. Like, I think if it's the Board of Finance looking at the fiscal, what?
There's work, but I'm okay.
There's work,
We're
but like, I don't see the true downside. Like, I do want to understand the composition of if it was opened up, how does that work? Like, is it 3 members of the Board of Finance and 3 members of the RTM? Like, I don't know how that would work, because I would want to be.
I think it is just that, 3 members. No, I'm wrong. There's, I think there's 5 from the RTM. There's 2.
So it would be a mix of like
it has
3
to be no more.
Democrats,
Yep.
2 Republicans?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
And it would be 3 from our board. The other thing that was painfully clear the last time we did this was, even though the Board of Finance starts this train going down the track, after we make recommendations,
they can do whatever they want.
They can do whatever they want.
But they could do whatever they wanted before as well. I mean,
Well,
with the
they
ordinance. With the ordinance,
right. But so.
But it doesn't have to come full circle back to the Board of Finance?
Nope.
It goes.
So if we open this up, we say tonight, okay, let's take a look at this again.
Yeah.
And we look at it and we say, I don't see anything wrong with this table. I think everything in here, and let me tell you something, that table is the whole thing. That table is the nuts and bolts of the whole darn thing. There were some administrative changes that were made in the wording. The RTM can go in and make those changes whenever they feel like it. That's not a big deal, right?
But help me understand that. So if they change the values on that table, and now instead of costing $3 million, it costs $6 million.
We have nothing to say.
Doesn't the Board of Finance have some
Nope.
oversight of that?
Nope. We went through this with counsel. With current counsel. Yeah, with Mr. Baldwin.
So it would be important for the Board of Finance on this joint subcommittee to have a voice to make sure that the dollar amount in total, as it's predicted, isn't excessive.
You know, this is the way I look at the state statute. Because the state statute says you as a Board of Finance have to start the process. I read that as, you think there's some benefit fiscally to doing this, right?
Define benefit, though.
Well, I mean, benefit to the people, but again, maybe a fiscal benefit too, right? It's the same point.
Okay.
But again, it was painfully clear last time we did this that after we made the recommendations, the RTM's like, we don't have to do any of this if we don't want, and the town attorney confirmed that. So by starting this, you do take it out of the control of the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
Therein lies the risk, and that's what happened. And again, this, history, of course. But when the RTM proposal came before, Mr. Mayor, and he was like, "You have no idea what you've done to this fiscally. This is a train wreck, right?" And it was a train wreck only because we literally couldn't predict how big that number was going to get.
So why would the RTM even present to the Board of Finance if we have no control?
Because
I think they went back to the state that it hadn't been happening. I don't think that they had been presenting to the Board of Finance for years. I don't know, like.
We had never, first 12 years, senior disabled tax relief, well, that was an RTM thing. We heard about it, and we knew there was a number in the budget, and that was just calculated. But I mean, the thing hadn't been changed since 2012, so it was kind of a cost of living increase kind of number, right? Yeah. And I somewhere, and I can probably dig it up for you.
Isn't the state statute that said it should be the Board of Finance that opens it up?
Yes.
We had ignored it for too long.
Yeah.
That's why it was difficult, because the RTM committee had done so much work, and then they came in front of us, and then there was kind of a realization that the Board of Finance needed to sort of initiate all of this.
Okay, so, and just as a matter of process, if we decide not to open it up, we go back to our board, and That's the
present this
recommendation
and
from
say
this
this is where it is.
subcommittee.
Yeah.
Yep,
The board then doesn't have to take any action and it dies there.
correct.
If this subcommittee decides that we do want to open it up, we can't make that happen. It has to be the full board that makes that decision, right?
Right,
it's a
so,
recommendation.
so if the three of us say, we think we should open it up,
Yeah.
and we three raise our hands and the other six say no,
No, it
that,
still doesn't happen. But at least there's a vote on it.
that is correct.
If we don't recommend it, there wouldn't be a vote.
There's still a vote.
Oh, there is a vote regardless.
So we would go in front of the board and we'd say, listen, we've reviewed it as a committee, we don't believe that it needs to be opened up again.
Okay,
Everyone can ask their questions,
yeah,
and, if they all agree with our decision, then it doesn't move forward, and then the RTM will not convene a subcommittee, or
right.
the broader subcommittee.
I'm going back to what you're talking about, Sheila. I don't think there's a downside, at least, to put this in front of our board. Like, I think there's a value, especially given how long this takes and it's not gonna happen for this current budget cycle. It's gonna be 12 months or 15 months from now. So I'm in favor of taking it back to the board to consider opening it back up.
I love what was done. I do, and I see the benefit. I'm concerned about that number.
Me too.
And, I mean, it's a concern. But I feel like there might be, again, there's no harm in opening this up. I know that there is.
There's harm.
There's harm. I know what you're saying.
There's a known right now,
I
and there's
know.
an unknown in the future, which again
I know.
is.
But there might be perspective that we don't have, and fiscally, so that's what I want to be a part of that fiscal kind of, not restraint, but that fiscal kind of I want to have that fiscal voice. I want to explain, look at this and say what's realistic, and hear people's perspectives on. I don't know. I just feel like there needs to be discussion on it.
Well, we lose the fiscal perspective if we go to the committee.
No, we don't, because we'll be a part of the committee.
Well, someone will be part of the committee.
Well, three of us.
Three of us
Three
will
of the
be.
9 Board of Finance
Right.
members, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I would ask Lori and the rest of the Board of Finance to consider that the three of us take that role. I'm certainly.
I won't do it.
You won't do it?
I've already told Lori that
Okay.
I was going to do this part of the committee, but I can't do this again.
Okay.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And and listen, I mean, it has nothing to do with pride of ownership or anything like that. It's just it's a lot of work. And I feel like I don't want to be, not that I'm the only one that knows anything on the Board of Finance about it, but I think other people need to know about it as well, and go through that learning process.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves. I would think that we'd be better off with you participating, but I respect and understand that you've paid your dues, and there is a cost associated with putting in that equity or sweat equity, and I get it. But as the new guy, maybe I've got a little bit of energy and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves. So.
Yeah. See, my perspective on it is, well, the bottom line for me is I think we need at least another year to see where the numbers are going.
Right.
I really do. So it'd be more favorable for me to move it one more, let it sit 1 year,
Right.
and get in there. And then next year we reconvene, because again, we didn't do this for 7 years the last time, change those numbers. So I don't think one fiscal year in this tumultuous 3 years of our lives is gonna make that much of a difference.
I wouldn't disagree with that either. I'm running the ladies' room. Keep talking.
And then the other thing, just for me, is all the numbers except for the total, they're all trending in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we did a good job the last time.
Yeah.
And everything's trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the the devil you know. You know, I mean, I know this devil, and I know what we're going through, and, you know, anytime you open anything up, it's, you know, something could happen, you know, so.
It's a risk. I get that.
Yeah, and then again, we are completely out of the, we open this up, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but we have no control.
And that's a little unsettling, for sure. I get that.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that $4 million number, you know, and I think I have at home. If not, I'll get it for both for all of us. The year over year numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
There for a really long time, we didn't. The tax assessor's office didn't really didn't apply math to this. They said, "Oh, I think it's going to be whatever," and it was consistently underrun. And every year we got a little money back from it. And I'd say, I think Ross had a lot to do with it. And Ross is probably in here 4 years, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We really started getting numbers that were very close.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on or overrunning a little bit. You know, we were very close. I mean, instead of getting like $200,000 back, which was not unheard of probably 10 years ago.
Sure.
We were now, we overran by 10 grand, or we're getting 5 grand back. So his numbers have been really close. So, you know, when we sat here and decided that we were going to take this up $500,000, we said, no, we brought it up $500,000, but there's benefit. You know, I wonder in my head, would we have done that if we known it was going to be, you know, $750,000? You know, so. Again, I was saying to Craig, you know, for me, it's a little bit of the devil, you know. Like, I know this devil right now. Give it a little more time to figure out what the heck happened, and especially with the reevaluation, because when I saw the number, I was like, how is that possible? We've been really close on the, you know, prediction.
Right.
And he's like, good, the reevaluation was, you know, just had a lot to people's houses were right in that range, you know.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I hear you.
Well, and Sheila, you had pointed to the bottom line number a couple of times, and I just want to say for the record that, you know, I get that this is a zero-sum game, right? So it is whatever relief the town provides to seniors and disabled, whatever tax relief is provided has to come from somewhere, and that means it's
and they provide less in terms of services.
Or they collect more taxes from those who are not in these categories, right?
I mean,
so,
and that's what ultimately happened.
Right,
Yeah.
but if you think about the number of households that we're talking about versus the total number of households,
right.
you know,
It's not a lot.
it's not a lot.
I
It's
know.
not a big burden. So,
That
that
is
$4
true.
million number doesn't scare me. You know, I think at the end of the day, what we're hearing, what I heard a lot when I knocked on
We're
doors
giving more.
was, you know, when I talked to a senior, they were worried about, I don't want to have to move.
Right.
And I want to stay in Fairfield.
Right.
Yeah, it's
And
an
my
excellent point.
grandkids are here, and I you know, I want to be
I
able
know.
to stay here.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that bottom line number is a bad thing. I think we just have to figure out a way to pay for it. And I don't think it's a bad thing to promote and increase awareness and participation
Right.
and things like that. And yes, there's a cost to that.
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know if we need to make a formal motion or otherwise, but I'm in favor of
I think we need
moving
to
forward.
formally vote.
Well, you know what,
And look,
I'd like to-
the decision isn't here either, right? This is just so that we put it in front of the 9 of us at our next meeting, and then we can
Exactly.
decide that. So,
Yeah.
and we can notice it with, Lori can put it on the agenda with enough time with public input as well, you know, before the
so
board.
you're okay having public comment at our board meeting rather than doing it again here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know,
I would love to hear public comment on what people think in terms of what's going on. I would. I'd love to hear.
But I
what
think at
people-
the full board, it would be.
That's what I'm
most
saying, at the full board.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know, I just want to comment on what you said. You know, I'd rather spend the next year raising awareness than looking at the ordinance again,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as a body. You know, because the other thing is, when I tell you this was a lot of work, it was a lot of work. Now it's going to be 3 other people, doing this work all over again. Maybe you don't have to go back as far.
I don't think you do, Chris. That's the thing. A lot of the work has been done. I think it's been done.
So that's what I don't understand then. What benefit are we having to opening this up again?
I am a process person. I wasn't happy with the process last time in terms of but I would have liked to have had the RTM at the table. They did a lot of work. They presented. Then we convened, but they were part of the audience. I think it should be a by board. What's the word?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Multi-board, yeah.
Representation, especially since the RTM, to me, if they're at the table, there's buy-in. And so that whatever goes to, whatever discussion or whatever goes in front of our board and their board, hopefully there's agreement and hopefully there's buy-in.
So
that would make it that. So that is part of what I.
So your best case scenario is we reconvene a committee, we all sit in a room or someone sits in a room, and we all say this is perfect.
Maybe.
And we don't do anything.
Or no,
Well,
maybe
because that's.
I don't mean that. I don't mean that. I mean that we work together, that this is agreed upon together, the 2 boards, so that there's buy-in on both sides. That's.
But buy-in would be, there's either, the buy-in is either, what we have is absolutely perfect, I don't think we should change it, or buy-in is, we gotta change it.
But what's the downside of either?
I just think it's the
downside,
I think the downside is just it's the manpower to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of things to do right now in this town. I really don't know if this is the best use of talent.
I hear you. I do hear you.
Yeah.
I do hear you.
So listen, I'm perfectly happy if we want to take a vote right now. Now, so the vote would be, what the recommendation of this committee would be to either make a recommendation in a presentation to our board that we convene a full committee of the Board of Finance and RTM Joint Committee to review senior and disabled tax relief, or not. So who is in favor of recommending to our board that we reopen what's the word I'm looking for? Start a new committee, start a new joint
committee.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
I'm going to say I'm in favor as well.
Okay.
All those not in favor?
I am opposed.
Fair enough. I respect that.
Nothing other than everything I've named here, and more and then, like you said, we'll
present it.
We'll present. So yeah, and we can talk about what we'd like to present. This data do you think this was?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. I think it's perfect.
And then if you want us to talk about our rationale for why we think that we should move forward, we'll do that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, listen, it wasn't a unanimous vote for sure.
And Chris, you should speak your mind.
Dissenting opinion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and for no other reason than everything I mentioned. Certainly this is certainly not a political thing, believe me.
No,
this is a pure manpower thing.
I think your points were legitimate. Like, I'm not discounting what you said.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't feel that way.
Kind of like appreciate everything you said and agree with some of it, Chris. It's more for me that I feel strongly that we should open it up to be. To get their
and again,
perspective.
I think that the point that you made, and you both made, that this does need time to season, and given the anomalies that we haven't had enough time to let it season and really see where it's falling out and the dust to settle.
Yeah.
And that should be brought up to the full committee and maybe the Board of Finance members, 9 of us.
I'm going to say let it sit.
Let it sit for another year.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to be very clear, and I'll say it in our meeting too. There was consensus, right? So this was not, the Board of Finance shoved this down the RTM zone, they had a vote on it. This was, believe me, I presented this 4 times between LNA and the full committee.
And there was also participation,
And there was participation. I mean, it was a very open meeting. Fairfield Senior Advocate was here. I think, Ms. Vergara and other people from the RTM were here. So
Right.
there was, and again, it was more of a, kind of an open, it was not a closed meeting. I can just tell you, Craig, it was not a, closed meeting, but it wasn't, does anyone have any comments? It was really open dialogue during the whole thing. So, but, no, I appreciate your time. So, great. Well, let's see. So recommendation for full, we just did that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna recommend.
So what should we do in terms of getting this on the agenda to talk to?
I will call Ms. Charlton tomorrow and ask her if we can get on the agenda for the 22nd.
Yep.
I'll present as the chairman, and then certainly I would appreciate both your comments.
And then the only thing I'd add is, if you could ask Lori to make sure that on the agenda it allows
Public
public
comment.
Yeah. No, good point. She's, we're working on the budget. And I wanted to talk to you about that when we get off the thing.
I saw the,
We're actually gonna put in the budget schedule to make sure we have public comment during the budget. Just because, we were learning, the first year was really a crapshoot. And then the second year, last year, I think we did a really good job remote, but we might have missed some public comments. So now we wanna make sure, depending on whether people can actually come to a meeting or calling in, that there's the opportunity to have public comment broken out that way. So, okay, we're gonna consider an act on any communications. I don't have any. I don't think you guys do. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Curley, Ms. Marmion, seconded. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much for anyone who's listening, and we're signing off. Good night.
Thank you.